It's Monday, July 28th, 2014. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight, we talk about children and technology and the future.
It's all right. Let's do this.
So my office needed a security camera just because someone walked into our office like during the day not that long ago. Went into like we have a little conference room kind of by the front door, and like they just walked in and took someone's laptop and walked out.
Awesome. Good job, them.
So we dealt with that, but the CEO was like, "We need a security camera," and I've started to learn over the years that in every job I've ever had, whenever there's anything that isn't like in the direct purview of like everyone's specific job,
They call someone else to take care of
no,
it.
they call me.
Oh.
Everywhere I've worked, IBM, my current company, my previous company, that hospital, anything weird, everyone's like, hey, and they come over to me and they're like, how do we get a security camera? And if someone else is tasked directly with one of those weird jobs, that person will come over to me and ask me, like, what do you know about security cameras? Because they assume that I know something about them.
Because you're the only one who knows how to Google.
Exactly. So, little Googling later, I found actually that security systems are not that expensive. Like big ones with like 4 night vision cameras and loaded up with SD
But
cards.
all you probably just need one camera and a recorder, and that's it.
Yeah. So I looked at all these systems, and they were not that expensive, and they'd be
And
really
you could
like,
probably install it yourself trivially.
like $500 or $600 tops for like a really good system that'll keep like a month's worth of HD video and all that stuff and IR splash. And then I looked at them, and I realized that if I buy that, I'll have to install it. I'll have to maintain it. I'll be in charge of it for as long as I work here, which
so
that's
you
how
just
I
called like some security company to come do
Oh,
it for
God,
$1 zillion
no. God,
dollars?
no.
For a
So
zillion dollars?
That's how I'm the phone administrator of this company.
You're doing the phones too? You don't have a contract for that?
I am the phone person. I in fact am a phone person now.
Did you set it up with
I set up everything.
power over Ethernet?
No.
It's not VoIP phones?
No, it's not.
It's just regular old
I
business
suggested
phone?
VoIP phones. They didn't want to pay for them.
But they're just better in every conceivable
I know.
way.
Don't get me started. So then I realized, all that. So then I just ordered a drop cam. And I told the person, like our office manager, like, look, you can set this up here. Because it's like, drop cam. It's like
They
baby's
couldn't
first.
set it up,
So they couldn't.
even though it was
but
baby's first.
wasn't their fault. So here's my problem with drop cam. Because I like drop cam.
You couldn't mount it?
No, none of that. One, I'm the only person in this company who drills into drywall.
Okay. You take a drill, you aim it at the wall, and you push
Yeah, just I
while
realized,
holding the trigger down.
Yeah, don't-
Make sure it's plugged in. Make sure the drill bit is in tight
when I went into
with
IT,
the drill bit key.
was Al Biles told me after he played his jazz trumpet and said, you should join IT. Tootly tootly toot. You'll make a lot of money. Tootly tootly toot. Won't have to do a lot of work. Tootly tootly toot. And he was 100% accurate in all that.
The guy told me the same thing.
Yep. You chose a slightly harder job that pays slightly less, but you get to do what you actually want.
I
kinda.
could make much, much more if I so desired.
You want to work for me?
Well, I could work less than 40 hours a week.
I could make that happen, but
Guaranteed.
you'd have to do mostly like really boring Java development.
Can I sit around and read Reddit for most of those less than 40 hours?
As long as you finish the tickets I assign to you and the code I give you.
Can I bike into work and bring my bike in the office?
That's what I do.
Can I wear like shorts and a t-shirt?
I've just been fucking wearing shorts to work.
Can I have like 30 vacation days?
No.
No.
Anyway, so I get the drop cam, and I have a drop cam now. Like I use it. That's our bunny camera or whatever, and they're great. Like I like them. I'm not going to review the drop cam on this. At work, I plug it in, doesn't work,
It's a broken one.
and it gives you zero information. It has an LED that can show blue or orange with or without blinking.
This is what people want. Apple products. You can't think you did just work.
So I plug
Magic.
it. So I plug it in, and it's
Simple.
and I
Simple.
look-
No help for you.
And of course, the office manager, like she set it up 100% correctly. And when she plugs it in, it blinks yellow, which means connecting. Then it shows blue, like connected to Wi-Fi. And then she gets an email, like it turned on, and it shows a picture that it took right then. But then if she clicks on the video, it times out, and eventually the light on the camera just turns off and nothing.
Mm.
And there's no logs. I even like plugged the device into a computer and poked around. Like there's no logs anywhere. The website just says your camera's not connected. Long story short, it needs a bunch of specific ports open out to the internet. And that's not documented fucking anywhere.
No, it probably just assumes you have like a UNP or basic home router.
Oh, even with that, like it doesn't work. It needs like 13, like the RTMP port open to the outside and port 80 and some other things. And it just doesn't fucking say anything. There's no way to troubleshoot this.
I'm sure it says if you Google it.
So I plugged it. No, it doesn't. That's the problem.
I'm sure there's someone who wrote this on the internet.
I found a few blogs of people, but the official Dropcam website basically doesn't actually give you any information.
That's the kind of thing that would be in the Dropcam forum on the support forum on their site.
Yeah, you know how I found it? Someone was complaining, saying that they should be able to configure the ports.
They should.
But they didn't say what ports it starts on by default. I just had to assume it. So knowing what I know, I got it all set up and got it working. And then I had some other issues where occasionally it'll just turn off and not turn back on. So I opened a support ticket with Dropcam. They have yet to respond. They're not, I don't think they have that many employees. And I think they're still not fully integrated into Nest because Nest bought them and Google bought Nest. So it's like GoPro. The hardware is great, but at the same time, the interface to that hardware is kind of butt.
Well, that's what happens when you try to buy simple stuff and not pro stuff.
Yes.
We're too used to pro stuff and semi-pro stuff.
I know. I mean, I'm looking right now at the Mackie we use for like Geeknights. I'm thinking back to like, what if we tried to do Geeknights now with the not professional equipment we had before, and I would just quit. I would just like not do Geeknights anymore.
All right. So in somewhat tech news, all right, the only thing I could find anything to say about Amazon opened up a new store today. It's actually just part of Amazon. I don't know what they call it, like a store, but it's really just a section of the Amazon.com for 3D printing, and it sells 3D printing supplies, books about 3D printing.
Smart move.
Plastic that you can use, etc.
You're at the Maker Faire. For 3D printing's big. I mean, how many people are kickstarting? I'm making a 3D printer. That's the same as all the other 3D printers, but crooked slightly so.
Right. You can actually buy 3D printers, too. But the one thing that they're selling that's interesting is actual things that are 3D printed. Now, they're not competing directly so much with Shapeways, where you send Shapeways your model and then your digital file, and then they print it and send it to you. What they're doing is they sort of have like these pre-done models. So, for example, create your own 3D printed Mixie for $30. And what you do is it's almost like you make a me using this little interface when you check out, and like you can choose the hair and the color and the face and whatever, and then they print. So it's sort of like you can slightly customize this 3D printed model, and then they print it out and send it to you.
That's a pretty good idea. I mean,
so you don't have to know any 3D modeling, and you can get some personalization.
Emily even had that idea, like way back when ponies were a thing. She was like, "I'm not going to do this because shit talking." But it'd be trivial to make like a bunch of pretty generic but very high quality pony models and then let people customize the parameters that are trivially customized and print their things for them.
I mean, this, Hasbro just went into a partnership with Shapeways, right?
Yep.
And they're actually, you can go to an official pony printing site and do similar thing there. Like, it's actually an official partnership. I think it's because Shapeways saw how many people were printing ponies.
Yep.
And they must have contacted Hasbro.
Well,
and
it helps
the deal
that,
started
one,
up.
Hasbro was way the fuck behind the curve on making merchandise. I mean, we talked about that on other shows. But
We Love Fine seems to be scooping up all the money on companies that are way behind on making merchandise.
Yep, We Love Fine is a brilliant business model. It's almost like
I just
Contra.
don't like any of their products because they're tacky as fuck.
You know what they are? They're the square print, silk screened Red Dragon shirt.
That's what they are.
Square print, Twilight Sparkle.
Yep.
But the ponies themselves, at least, like the model, is a pretty simple model and doesn't have the kinds of things that make it difficult to print, like a lot of like anime characters.
You might have a unicorn horn.
Yeah, you know what's hard to print? Tall things with thin legs. You know what's easy to print? Squat things with big old blob legs.
You could just print the tall, skinny thing really big.
Yeah, but even then, it's gonna have issues.
Sure. Anyway,
I mean, unless you put like polonium in the feet, you can't make a Sailor Moon crystal model that'll stand under its own power. I don't think.
Crystal, no. You can make a Luna model.
Huh?
Or you can make a wand.
So I think this story, a wand in quotes. So this story does tell us one thing that we've been saying a lot. 3D like the 3D printing stuff, like people kind of poo-poo it as like this really like early hobby thing. Once again, it is moving way faster than almost everyone thinks it is.
Yeah, 3D printing, it's like you look at Oculus Rift and I'm like, I don't think in any time soon it's going to be small, convenient, or cheap enough for everyone to be using that, etc.
Yeah, like people who are into it will use it. Nerds for it will use it. Same with Google Glass right now.
But the 3D printing, that's already a thing, right? I mean, originally 2D printing was a thing that you couldn't do unless you went to a printing press. And 3D.
I remember when Kinko's opened up near my house. Jesus Christ!
And like some majorly rich person might have a printer. Right?
I went to that Kinko's like the week it opened with
like
all my D&D
a copy
books.
machine was a big deal. You had to go. It's like the library, and they had one. You put quarters in it.
I remember printing photocopies of pages from my Dungeons and Dragons books, and that was goddamn magic.
Right. And now you can just print. I can print fucking photos, which the for like 30 cents, which the drugstore used to have to do, and it took 24 hours.
Scott was printing ultra high resolution glossy photos on photo paper at our booth at Kineticon.
And I didn't even need power outlets, though I used them because I can use them.
And you were just sending the photos to that thing wirelessly,
Wireless.
too, weren't you?
I took a photo in the camera, wirelessly sent it to the iPad where I photoshopped it, and then wirelessly sent it to a printer that could have been battery powered, which then printed
Yeah, Scott, think about this. When we were kids, you know what didn't exist? Wireless anything, unless you talk about CB radios, a computer powerful enough to do any of that, printing on paper, printing in color.
Right, so 3D printing is going to be just, it's going to be just like 2D printing is.
Yeah.
I just think the thing is, 2D printing is something that...
Died?
No, it's something that like a lot of people sort of generally needed, right? Like everyone needed it. If you had a computer, you sort of needed a printer, because like you would especially pre-internet, you would type a letter, but then you couldn't internet it to anyone, so you had to print it and mail it, or print it and hand it in to the teacher. And even today, if you're in school or even in a business, you still need to print out documents, right? I think people print way more documents than they really have to.
Oh my God, don't get me started on how many developers...
Probably like 1 in 50 documents actually needs to be printed. And that's a conservative estimate, but... there are occasions where you still need to print out documents.
How many times
a
developer has asked me a question about a spec, and I walk over, and they show me the section they have a question on because they printed out like the whole Confluence page. And I'm like, guy, I've updated that page like 40 times in the last month.
Yep. Yep. But yeah, 3D printing is not something everyone will need to have in their home, because like a lot of people might just never need to print a 3D thing.
Yeah, of course, at the same time, I could argue that the same thing was said of printing on paper. For a time.
I mean, like, what would my parents ever need to print in 3D?
So imagine, let's skip the far future where, like you're printing like everything.
Right, when you're printing food, sure, we're skipping that. We're talking about the plastic 3D
so
printing.
So the next level is going to be where every hobbyist who has a physical hobby will have one.
Absolutely.
Because that's when you're making a Gundam model and you break something, like, well, better print another one.
Print out a replacement part there.
Exactly. So I think it'll pull almost everyone who's a human who is
every nerd and art person will want one, even whether they can afford one or not. But it'll get cheaper too. It'll be like $200, like a desk jet.
So my hope is that everyone in the industrialized world who's otherwise mostly achieved Maslow's pyramid, like you have food, you're not living in crippling poverty, you're gonna have some hobby that involves physical components of some kind. And I think that will that level. Once printers get that reliable, when they're as reliable and probably still as expensive as an inkjet printer, I think you're going to see where like 60-70% of interneted households will have one within 30 years.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe. I'm really I'm not sure. I'm not married to that. I'm just.
But I mean, like, even if you have a use for one, if you don't use it that often, you're probably better off just having someone else print your 3D things.
But that's
for
another interesting trend we're seeing is that
like this Amazon store.
This is kind of an aside, but young people. I mean, all the car companies, and they're still going crazy about this. If you pay attention to like mainstream media, they're like millennials aren't buying cars. And they're all trying to figure out like why.
Because we don't live in stupid suburbs like dumbasses.
Yep. But part of it too is that young people who live in cities, in my opinion, are way more willing to share things that require a lot of capital investment with other people in their demographic, or even just other people. I mean, most people who live in New York can't afford to have their own rec room with a pool table in it. So guess what? There's a whole bunch of pool halls that you can play pool in instead.
That's just cities have always been like that, period. But in the suburbs...
So cars are the same way now in the sense that a lot of people are willing to share cars, use their friends' cars, or use things like Zipcar and taxis. But again, cities drive that.
You don't go anywhere and you just stay home and internet.
So 3D printers are, again, the same way. I know enough people who have 3D printers to where if I want to print anything 3D, I can ask a whole bunch of different friends.
Or go to this Amazon store.
Or go to
Shapeways.
Yeah. So maybe we won't need them all in all of our houses because so enough of the people in this young tech demographic will have them to where everyone has one. It's like even if not everyone we know has a smartphone, everyone we know is almost always in the presence of someone they know who has a smartphone. So in other news, this is kind of amazing. A new virus was discovered.
The kind that hurts people or the kind that hurts computers?
We're not sure what it does. People virus.
People.
It hurts individual cells, arguably, but, a lot of viruses are pretty benign. This one's a bacteriophage.
Okay.
Your guy.
So it kills all the bacteria.
Not necessarily. You know the guy in every biology textbook in the world?
He goes in the bacteria, he multiplies, he looks like an octagon with a little bug behind him.
Yes, he looks like the little bug.
Yeah.
With the little
and then he explodes the bacteria or the cell, and a million little viruses come out.
So, well, they don't always explode. There's they can all work in different ways.
Sure.
So, a new one of those was discovered,
Mm-hmm.
and apparently it has infected possibly the vast majority of all humans and has been present for a long time.
Okay.
And yet somehow we never noticed it.
Well, it's really fucking small.
So, so there's this whole story that
and if it's not in like a high quantity in your body, if it just sort of hides
a newly
out.
discovered virus has been found by a San Diego State University team to live inside more than half of all human gut cells sampled.
Yep.
There's a cool, complicated story of how they found it. They're trying to figure out what it does, all sorts of things about it. The article talks a lot about why it was so hard to find it. And
it looks like every other kind of virus. You pass right over it when you're looking in the microscope.
It's a little more complicated than that.
We don't sample a lot of gut cells.
People think, they sample gut cells via fecal matter primarily. Or as the scientist who wrote this article said, poo.
Sure.
He's like, poo. He just calls it poo.
There you go.
So, remember, things that we think about as common knowledge, a lot of those things were not discovered but relatively recently. Case in point, vitamins. Go look up when different vitamins were discovered. We have not known about vitamins for that long, guys.
Flintstones vitamins, right? You know why they're Flintstones vitamins? Because we discovered that shit and we started selling them when the Flintstones were hot. When were the Flintstones hot? 70s? 60s and 70s?
This is the second time you've brought up Flintstones in a casual conversation via a tangent.
It's what's it called?
Have we ever done it's the bear shitting in the woods syndrome?
No,
that's what I call that.
The thing where you see the same word being used. And
yes, I call that bear shitting in the woods syndrome.
Why is it bear shitting in the woods syndrome?
George Carlin.
I'd never heard that bit.
Anyway,
I'm gonna go find it on YouTube after the show.
Anyway, so yeah, vitamins were discovered relatively recently, and the whole reason I'm bringing this up is one, it's real science news. It's interesting. Some research might come out of this, but most importantly, the virus has the best name I have ever heard for a virus ever. It is called the assphage.
Oh my God.
CR, it's crassphage, but capital CR, lowercase r.
Capital ASS.
Capital ASSPHAGE.
There you go.
It is the assphage virus. And the
crass is also a great word. The crass ass.
The crassphage, the assphage. Slashdot is mostly focusing on the name.
Why wouldn't you? What else is there to focus on?
And here's a comment. I am the last author on the paper. And it was discovered by my bioinformatics lab in the CS department at SDSU. It was named after our analysis software, CR uppercase A SS, cross-assembly.
Because they're investigating poo. So that's why they named it that way, because their software is about poo.
So thus, they decided to go all out on that. Kind of like how at IBM, we had a huge server we were building that was just a data store, like hundreds of terabytes, ridiculous storage server. So we were like, what should we call it? And we came up on the BMFS, which stood for officially Big Motherfucking Server. But we came up with some other reason that acronym was there so we wouldn't get in trouble. But I present for your consideration the assphage. But anyway, things of the day. You all may or may not be familiar with the music video to a song entitled Turn Down for What?
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 Turn down for what?
The music video is pretty special in its own way.
It's the most special.
But that's not my thing of the day. I'll link to it because you really should see what it is, possibly, before you watch
If
my
you can
thing of the
handle
day.
it. If you can handle it, you should watch it.
So it's pretty.
A lot of people can't handle it.
It's pretty.
They turn down.
It's pretty unhandleable.
I don't know for what, but They
What?
turned down.
Our whole thing over the weekend with when we had friends over was the Skeletor. What? So unrelated. Oh, I could mash those up pretty well.
Turned down for what?
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 So this is that music video, but the music has been removed, and they have Foleyed in all the possible...
What is this Foley? I don't know. You keep using that word. I don't know where that word came from.
Really? Okay, so you know in a movie when like you see a dog run by, like in a house, like just there's a dog in a house running by, and you hear like their nails like running by on the hardwood? That doesn't get recorded when they're filming it.
Obviously, but why would it be called Foley?
Foley is what that's called.
I
Foley
thought
is
it's just
when
called dubbing.
No, dubbing
Sound
is the
effects.
voices. Foley is when you recreate in a sound studio individual sounds for like sound effects to go along with a movie. So
Isn't
like
that just
keyboards
called sound
typing.
effects?
No, that's called Foley.
Okay.
Should I link to you to an article on
I
Foley?
don't disbelieve you. I just thought, I just didn't know there was a
Quote,
special
Foley is the
word.
reproduction of everyday sound effects that are added to film, video, and other media in post-production to enhance audio
I
quality.
didn't disbelieve you. I just said that's a word I hadn't heard. I
Here's
just
the
thought you
difference.
just say put in sound effects.
Putting in sound effects is where you take an existing sound effects library and add sound effects to something. Foley is when you take like a melon and then you put like a knife in your fist and you stab it, and then you stab it along with the movie to make the sound of stabbing.
Isn't that just making sound effects?
Yes, making sound effects for movies.
Okay.
Especially adding in like the little background clicks and things, like when people bump into each other, someone gets hit, someone drops a phone book.
Okay.
Like the did you ever read on how they made the lightsaber sounds in Star
Yeah,
Wars?
it's an electric razor in a metal bowl.
Exactly, that's Foley.
Okay.
Yeah,
Who doesn't know that? If you didn't know that and and you were surprised by my answer, well, you're not a real geek. Take that, regardless of gender.
It could have been. I was about
All
to
you
make
fake geeks, listen to Geeknights.
I was about to make a really inside joke. Wow, he's good. Anyway, this music video with no music and with just really well Foleyed in sound effects is basically a horror movie. It is horrific to behold.
It was a horror movie to begin with.
Trigger warning for what?
for everything.
Yeah. Anyway. So you got a thing of the day?
I do. It's actually Star Wars related, Mr. Star Wars.
I guess it's Flintstones time.
All right. So this is an article on Boing Boing, The Limits of Animal Life on Tatooine. Maggie Coworth-Baker, science writer on Boing Boing, on why the megafauna of George Lucas' parched desert world makes no sense. It's not the dry heat that's the problem, it's the food supply. Big, long, awesome article. All this Gandalf girthing plus science. But even better, at the bottom it says, read the rest of the Tatooine Science Carnival. This post is part of a series spread over several blogs, all about the animals, climate, and oceans of Tatooine. Be sure to check out the rest of the stories. Tatooine is oceans, news to me. Even though I know how they make lightsaber noises, I did not know the desert world had water on it. Maybe it's underground or some shit.
Tatooine? What about Dantooine?
Totally different planet. Only nerds know that those are actually two different planets, but they're both in Star Wars and both mentioned in the original trilogy.
Hoth, Endor, Hoth's forest moon, not Hoth. Endor or Endor's forest moon, Endor.
You mean, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I was always a big fan of the Ice Planet Hoth. I had all these Legos that were like Ice Planet dudes.
Well, my brother had Ice Planet Legos, but they were not Hoth Ice Planet. But now
They were just
now they
old-
actually have Hoth Legos.
Yep. But you know what? They actually worked in the snow. Do you know how many Legos I'd lose every winter in the front yard and then find in the spring?
Well, never have a pool and bring your boat Legos in there.
Yeah, most of those ended up in the pool filter at the
Yeah,
end of the
that's where
season.
they go.
And then they're all bleached out from the chlorine and disgusting. Yep. In the Meta Moment, the book club book is A Canticle for Leibowitz. I'm only on my 5th novel since I finished it, waiting for Scott to
When do
finish
you
it.
read these novels?
I guess I read faster than you. I don't know.
No, it just went. I read really fast. If I read,
On the subway?
I'm not on the subway. I'm biking every day.
Occasionally I subway, like if it's raining.
Okay, but if I occasional subway, I have to hack all the portals, and I don't read on the subway.
Most of my subway is underground, so I don't hack any portals. I
Most
just
of
read
my
books.
subway's above ground.
Just read books. Also, I fly
And the
around.
underground part is like 5 minutes.
I also actually read when I'm laying in bed before I go to bed.
I read the internet.
And sometimes I read while I'm cooking.
I
If I'm-
play
if it's
video-
a
I play
fairly-
video games.
If it's fairly low impact cooking.
I do not read during those times.
If it's not that interactive in the cooking.
Mhm.
So yeah, we got a bunch of videos up. We're streaming a lot more, so follow both of us on Twitch because now that Kineticon's passed, we have no conventions until PAX.
Speaking of PAX, huge meta moment news.
Yep, the biggest meta moment news we've ever
that
had.
you've ever. So if you usually skip the meta moment, you just fucked up. You fucked the fuck up.
Now you fucked up.
Just in case we were worried, we might not get a panel at PAX Prime this year because that shit keeps getting bigger, and we are not getting any bigger. We're sort of the same size.
Yep, and while PAX has been very good to us, I mean, we've performed at literally
love
every
you, PAX.
without exception since 2008, including...
I will continue to kiss your ass, but because I want to, not because I'm getting a reward out of it.
Yep,
because your ass tastes so good.
We flew to Australia to do a panel at a PAX.
Yep, on purpose because we wanted to.
Yes, they didn't pay us to do that.
Right. Anyway,
but I don't want to assume.
But we were worried, just in case maybe we wouldn't get a panel at PAX this year because it's bigger and badder and awesomer. So I bought some tickets to PAX, and because I'm good at interneting, I got four weekend passes.
Now, if you want to know how hard it is to get these passes, I want to point out that Scott and I noticed badges went on sale and entered the queue at roughly within the same minute. Definitely, Scott got 4-day badges.
The maximum you can get, four-day badges.
And it was sold out by the time I got through the queue.
That's right. So I bought the 4-day badges, and our panel was accepted. So we don't need any of them, but Emily needs one. So Emily gets one.
Yes.
And then they cost a lot of fucking money. They were like $110 each. So I don't care if you hate me. I got to sell at least one of these fuckers to get some money back. Because I have money. That's $440. That's a lot of fucking money. I could have bought a really fancy camera lens or all kinds of crazy shit with that money that I didn't buy. But the other two, we will sacrifice for you, maybe. We're going to use them for self-promotion advertising purposes. Because maybe, like I said, Geeknights isn't getting any bigger. But maybe with the injection of PAX badges, it can be. So here's what we're going to do. We need you people who listen to Geeknights who want to go to PAX but don't have tickets. We're going to do the same stupid thing everyone else does. We're going to make a tweet, right? And you can retweet it, or you can make a tweet to, your favorite Geeknights episode. It has to link to us in some way to promote us, and it has to have hashtags of Geeknights and also the hashtag of PAX. 2 hashtags, right? That way, it'll get promoted when people search for PAX-related tweets, and also people will know the name of Geeknights and also be linked to our shit. You could even just link to, it doesn't have to be a Geeknights episode. You could link to one of our YouTube videos. It just a link to some of our content in some way, even a PAX panel, and have those 2 hashtags. Or you could even be at Geeknights, hashtag PAX. That's okay too.
Well, the @Geeknights can't be at the beginning of it.
Obviously.
Otherwise, we're not going to count it, dudes.
And I don't know, we might be able to add in G+ and Facebook. The issue there is we have to be able to find your message when we do a search, right?
That's all you.
I don't know how
say Twitter only.
I think for now, Twitter only. If I figure out how to search for everyone who did this on, G+ or Facebook, we can do it there also. But for now, Twitter only. If you do that, we will randomly select someone, and on the day I receive the PAX badges in the mail, I don't know what day that's going to be, and then I will immediately that day go to the post office and mail the 2 of them to that person.
If you wish. If for
after
whatever
direct
reason,
messaging them on Twitter and getting their address.
If for whatever reason.
If you fail to direct message me back within the 24 hours, I can pick someone else. And that's how it's going to go.
Yep. On the off chance that for whatever reason we can't mail them to you because you're a person without an address or something weird, we can give them to you at PAX.
And I will swear that, if you meet us on the Thursday morning, or Thursday pretty much any time after I land.
Well, I'm going to be at PAX Dev the whole time. So.
All right, well, I'll give them to you. You can
and then
take them
Thursday
there.
evening is the Sky High charity.
There will be plenty of opportunities if you are a person who has your shit together to find us in Seattle and get the badges. I promise you that, you paying for your airfare and hotel, which we are not contributing to in any way, shape, or form. It's just the 2 tickets.
Oh, I was about to promote the pre-packed Sky High Tabletop Play benefiting Food Lifeline. It's
now
sold
that people
the fuck out.
Okay, well, there you go. So you're not going to that unless you already have tickets to it.
Yep.
But yeah, if you do not have PAX tickets, and that is the thing that is keeping you from PAX Prime, I have 2.
They're 4-day badges too, guys.
They're 4-day PAX tickets. I'm not bullshitting. You can get them if you promote Geeknights by Twitter in the correct way.
Yep.
Starting now.
Stay tuned.
We're going to make a news post on our website with the full instructions and rules. I hope we don't get in trouble with some state law about contests and prizes or anything like that.
Yep. Basically, for people listening, it'll be you have to have hashtag Geeknights, Hashtag packs. They're separate
Well,
hashtags.
You could also have at Geeknights, but
Yep,
it can't
that
be the
works too.
first thing in your post because then no one will see it except us.
And it has to link to something that we created.
Some of our content must be linked with a URL.
And it must be Geeknights content. If you link to like my personal blog.
Yeah, you can't link to one of my Netrunner videos.
But it's okay to link to my Rim's YouTube account because that's basically the official Geeknights one, and all our PAX lectures are there.
I guess you could link directly to the channel. Yeah,
Yeah, YouTube
you could
channels
link
are
to
okay.
a Geek Nights Presents Utena. It has
That's
to be
fine.
some sort of Geek Nights content. Anyway,
Yeah.
that's it.
All right. So, our friends had a baby, and the baby's...
We've had a lot of friends who had babies.
Yep, but one of them had one a while ago, and this one's formed up to the point where still kind of pre-verbal. Like, he'll talk, but it's that kind of not making sense talk. But what we noticed that was interesting was watching this kid, because I am very rarely around young children. and when I am...
That is for the better. Our society's rules are functioning as designed.
Hey, kid, you want to learn the words that are going to make your mom flip the fuck out? They got to be a little older for that. So...
I told him, hey, if you want to know anything about the history of your parents or anything about them, you just find anyone named Scott. There's like 2 or 3 of us.
We all knew your parents before they were dating each other, both of them.
That's right.
So what I noticed, because they came over, we hadn't seen them forever. They're in our apartment. The kid's running around. His middle name is Danger, which is like double awesome. But that's all besides
Or the opposite of awesome. He'll find out when he goes to school whether that's awesome or not.
I think it's pretty awesome. It's very Moxie crime fighter.
But you're not some student in school who may be positively or negatively appreciating that fact.
So I noticed something. When he was running around our apartment doing his kid thing, he was a kid by all normal ways, but he went around seeking out anything that looked like electronics, and the first thing he would do is try to interact with the touchscreen on it.
Or push buttons.
If there was no
He wanted to push
touchscreen-
buttons and touch screens and look at screens.
Yep, he would push the button, and it wasn't just random. If he was pushing buttons and it wasn't having any visible outward effect, he'd figure out they were fake. Like I gave him my controller, like my big arcade stick, and it wasn't plugged into anything. So he messes with it. He immediately looks up the TV while he's messing with it, realizes it's not actually plugged in, and got mad at me. But then when if it got a reaction,
I gave him my GoPro and he pushed the button and he didn't understand that it was a camera, but it beeped when you pushed the buttons. So he liked pushing those buttons.
Beep, 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 beep. But once he figured out how to turn off the TV, he wanted nothing more than to make sure that TV was fucking off.
Or on again.
And the most beautiful thing, though, was we had the HDPC plugged in. So we had a Windows desktop on the TV. There was a YouTube video that we had been playing that was paused. The first thing he did when he saw the TV is ran over and hit the TV screen itself. His finger, he hit the pause button specifically to make it play again. Now, my TV's not a touchscreen. That obviously didn't work. But think about this. A kid who's like a year old already understands touchscreens more than most adult humans that I know. Kids growing up now are in some ways fundamentally different from kids who grew up in earlier eras.
I grew up with a keyboard and a gamepad, so I fundamentally understand those things.
Yep.
But I also know how to use a touchscreen.
Exactly. But I'm starting to wonder more about what kids who are growing up now, like what they're going to be like in terms of technology. Because on one hand...
I don't know if this is a technology issue. This is more like a child psychology issue.
But the technology is allowing child interactions that in the history of humanity basically couldn't exist.
Okay.
Like kids have access to the kinds of information and environments that it's almost unprecedented, the interactivity that they can have.
There's been something unprecedented in every era of child. No one has raised children that grew up in similar conditions that they grew up in.
Arguably, there were multi-hundred-year spans throughout many of the great empires of history where multiple generations in a row grew up under effectively identical cultural and political regimes.
Those were dark ages, and they were dark for a reason.
Also, during non-dark ages, like ancient Greece and places like that, a lot of those societies were for long stretches in the micro were pretty static in terms of child rearing.
Okay. Those are societies I don't want to live in.
Yeah. Plus, what about from Cro-Magnon to the births of civilizations and writing and agriculture and all that, people raising kids, nothing really changed much. The rate of change of technology in relation to the span of human lifetime is accelerating, and the rate of acceleration is itself accelerating. That rate, by the way, is called jerk.
Why don't we just call it rim then?
I'm the acceleration of an acceleration.
No, you're a jerk.
So I realized, too, looking back at me as a kid, I mean, I grew up without computers. Computers came after I was already like really sentient and already could do math and stuff. Like, I did not have
Apple II in kindergarten, and
We
I had
didn't have
Atari 2600
I had a video game console.
before kindergarten, and an NES in elementary school.
I mean, I didn't have a cell phone until college.
I didn't own one till college. My family had them when I was in high school.
Yep, my family also had them when I was in high school. I would occasionally borrow it. Smartphones, I didn't have until like 2008, 2009.
Smartphones existed when we were in late college because Steve Pomeroy had them, but I didn't have one until the day the iPhone. I didn't personally own one. I had Blackberries from the job I got as soon as I graduated college, which I guess counted. But I didn't personally own one until the day the iPhone 3G came out. I was in line, I bought it.
I was a functioning adult on my third for real career job when I first had in my possession a device that would show me a live map of where I was with GPS data.
iPhone 3G did that.
I didn't have an iPhone 3G. I didn't say first thing that existed. I said I owned one.
I mean, you could have had the Palm Trio.
Yeah, I could have, but I didn't.
Or one of those Windows CE phones.
I bought a Palm Pre.
Symbian phone.
I used my work BlackBerry for like 6 months, and then I bought a Palm Pre.
There you go.
So I didn't grow up having a lot of like directly always connected access to information. And when I think back at my life, the way I interacted with the world was fundamentally different from the way I interact with it now. I mean, I had to explore neighborhoods because there was no way for me to know what was around. What, flip through the yellow pages? Go through a road atlas that's like 15 years out of date?
Use AAA because we're driving to Florida. Print out a triptych.
Oh my God, triptychs.
With a highlighter.
Yeah, the guy would like print out maps and highlight your route for you. And you know what? If something went wrong on that trip, you were fucked.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I remember in the old days, I used my AAA card, which was long expired, but the AAA website only checked to see if the number was valid. It didn't check to see if the account was active to let you log in. So throughout all of our IT, I could go generate triptychs, and I stopped doing that once MapQuest and Google Maps.
We used MapQuest because Google Maps did not yet exist. We used Yahoo Maps when MapQuest was giving shitty directions.
Yep.
Then we kept using them because Google Maps version 1 was garbage. And then Google Maps became good and all the other maps died.
But even then, we would, before a trip, like someone's job was to figure out the route, print all the maps for the entire trip. Because if we got on the road without those maps, bad news. At a convention.
So we're mostly just talking about olden days now and not talking about kids at all.
So think about kids now. Kids are growing up, one.
So you agree.
They can look up anything at any time all the time, thus eliminating 90% of the conversations I had as a child. Like a kid, like once a kid gets to the point where they start using technology, why will the Kelvin's dad situation ever happen again? Will a kid ever ask their parents how something works when they know that they can just type it into the internet and they'll get an answer?
Will kids in elementary school ever be like, in Mortal Kombat, there's a secret you can get boobality. It's
boobality.
A thing.
Yeah. You know who's going to say that? I have a theory about what's going to happen. The divide, we always talk about the digital divide and how it's wide and how it's wider than anyone realizes and way more important than anyone realizes. I think it's even worse than that. I think, because I've seen this already, the children of people I have seen who themselves are not supercomputer are also not supercomputer. But the children of people who are computer are so much more computer than even their parents already that I think that it's not like the computers and the internet and all this access is going to democratize our culture. I think the divide between digital kids and not connected kids is going to be so great that is going to be the primary former of cliques in physical schools among young kids growing up.
I don't know. I go to the mentoring, and it's at a computer high school, a public computer high school, the Academy for Software Engineering.
Yep.
Right? And I go and I see these high school kids, right? And there are a few who are those nerdy kids who are coding. They're going to be Steve Pomeroy's one day. But most of them don't computer, right? Even though they're at a computer school, they can use a computer, but they don't understand how a computer works for reals. They don't have that instinct to Google everything, right? It's like they're still reading like video game magazines from GameStop, right? They don't read Polygon, right? They don't know really what's going on. There's one kid, Metal Gear is his thing. Number one thing, right? Of all his geekeries. For me, Metal Gear is like, meh, right? Not into Metal Gear, really.
Yep. I like old Metal Gear, but...
I know Metal Gear, but I'm not super into it. I can't get past like 2 rooms in Metal Gear Solid.
Nah.
Right?
I didn't like Metal Gear Solid.
I knew more about Metal Gear than this kid because I internet. I mean, he knew like all the Metal Gear games that existed. He knew what you would know about Metal Gear if you went to GameStop and played every Metal Gear game and read video game magazines, right? But I knew who Hideo Kojima was, and he doesn't.
So that's my question. Are his parents internet-y, or do you have any way to know?
I don't know.
Because I'm starting to think, I'm worrying that when I see kids, it tends to be kids of internet people, and those kids seem like I see them on a path that could not have existed in the world I grew up in. Like they're going to grow up to be so much more reliant upon and connected to technology than I ever was. But at the same time, when I interact with other kids, I feel like they're less internet than kids who grew up in the era of no internet.
But it's also, the computers, it's like if we wanted to internet, right, we had to do the hard way, right? They just like Facebook, whatever.
True,
so they end up not learning anything about actual computers.
But at the same time, not everyone has to learn about the core computers, because I see some kids who they use computers effectively. Like if they don't know something, they immediately Google it. But most kids don't even do that.
But I think that's what I'm saying is I think it's the percentage, right? So back in the day, some percentage of kids are going to be computery. I don't think the percentage is increased. It's the same percentage as it was when we were in school, right? But of that percentage in our day, 100% of the kids who were going to be computery had to learn everything for reals because there was no other way.
Yep.
Now, same percentage of total kids will be computery internet-y, but a smaller percentage of that will actually learn anything about how computers work. And the other, of that small percent now just use computers, and the same number of people don't know anything.
Yep. There's also this other factor that...
They just Facebook and Candy Crush.
The other thing that they have that we didn't have is everyone else around them recording everything forever. I mean, all of us posted embarrassing shit when we were in like elementary school and middle school on internet places.
I wish there had been more of that. See, here's the thing. People complain about it. They're like, oh no, it'll ruin your life.
I would give anything to be able to go back and read the things that I wrote.
So much that there was more documentation. I can go back and just see, pictures, videos, recorded accounts of dates and times, because I don't remember much.
Yep.
If I had things recorded back in the day, oh my God.
I mean,
if I had been able to save my Pokemons to the cloud in high school and my original Pokemons, I still have them now.
The other day, I found a single picture that I didn't know existed. That was a picture of the inside of our apartment at RIT. That wasn't that long ago. Mm-hmm. It was like finding the remnants of the Holy Grail. Like, I'm looking in the background, like, look at that CRT. Who the fuck is that? Oh, right, Scott owned that Israeli flag. What are those huge speakers? What happened to those? Like,
huge speakers?
Yeah, we had these huge speakers just, like, laying on the floor next to my computer.
What?
They were, like, 1.5 feet tall.
Were those part of that, like, only 1.5 feet? That was that black sound system you had.
That awful sound system that
you used as your speakers.
Yeah, I used as my speakers and yeah.
I thought you meant huge speakers, like, person tall.
No.
Not 1 foot. Yeah, no, those part of that sound system you had. And it was the boombox I had.
And then I look at the screen and I saw that I was playing Final Fantasy IV on my computer.
Mm-hmm.
Just randomly. And it looked like I was fighting Zeromus.
Paladin?
Yeah. But kids now are growing up in a world where everything they do is cataloged forever if their friends and or family are internet people.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's going to be another digital divide between kids who have this documentation of their lives and kids who don't. Because if your parents
but if you have
internet,
documentation of your life, right? I mean, we want documentation of our lives, but what if your life was really shitty and you have documentation of it, and so does everyone else?
Yep.
That could be bad.
It's good or bad. The thing is, it's
both at the same time.
Different.
It's good and bad.
It's fundamentally different, and that's the only thing we can say about it. We can't say if it's good or bad. It's just different and inevitable.
It's good and bad.
And yeah. Well, maybe it's not bad, but there's a short-term bad and a long-term good.
Anyway, yeah. If you got a time machine, you'll go take video of my life. please do. I want to. I don't care what happened then. I want to see it.
So I guess I don't know what to do about the divide because I'm thinking about that more and more, and I think it's going to be like, I think the digital divide, just the way different children grow up with different access to technology, is more controlled by their parents and the culture of their family than it is by a lot of other factors. And I think a lot of kids who would otherwise be internety and smart, if their parents are not also pushing them toward internet, they will not internet and they will just be completely left behind by their peers who internet.
Let's predict this horrible dystopia.
I don't know if it'll be a dystopia.
Where the technological elite rule and the people who don't understand computers are peasants.
That is what's going to happen. I just don't know.
Is that what you? That's just what you want to happen.
No, I really don't. I imagine.
I think it's going to be more like Ghost in the Shell, right? Where, yeah, there are people who are super internet, but people are getting by. People aren't peasants, right? They're just getting by in internet world.
I guess I imagined a world where everyone I interact with on a daily basis had the personal capability of Googling things they didn't know. Mm-hmm. And I realized that is utopia for me. Mm-hmm. If the average person that I talked to knew had a vague awareness that anytime they didn't know something, they could just Google it, and they did that, I can't imagine the kinds of conversations I would have with strangers.
What about people who, it seems like they just don't want to know things.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like people they just do things, right? It's like they watch TV, they go to work, they get drunk.
So how did we get that
sleep,
hunger?
They eat food.
Did we
get
that?
They don't want to know things.
Did we get that hunger for knowledge because we didn't have internet and then we did? I grew up without internet, and then one day I got access to internet. And basically, if you chart my life and what I was doing with different percentages of my time, the day I got access to the real internet, the majority of my time became that to the exclusion of almost everything else.
Yeah.
It was like I was walking through the desert, and then someone walked over and said, here's a spigot of infinite water. Use it as much as you want for the rest of your life.
Drinking for the rest of my life, mostly.
So then I hand it to other people, and they're like, what the fuck is this? I prefer to be thirsty.
Or maybe they're just not thirsty. And if they don't need water to live.
Yeah. And if you spray them with it, they just
like
get mad.
Cactuses. They don't need too much water.
So it's the world of geeks wearing camelbacks that are connected to a giant spigot in the sky, and everyone else is a camel, eventually dying alone in the desert after breeding. I think we're taking it up. Someone just tweeted. Okay, they didn't have the hashtags, but they just tweeted to video of our panel. They don't know about the contest yet, obviously.
Doesn't count.
No, because it doesn't have the hashtags, but they just tweeted it now. I found that funny.
Okay. Well, it doesn't count.
Yep.
Sorry.
All right, I think we're done. I'm hungry. It's nice out. I want to go run.
Okay.
I'm hungrier for food right now than I am for information. This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music, Kat Lee for web design, and Brando K for the logos.
Be sure to visit our website at frontrowcrew.com for show notes, discussion, news, and more.
Remember, Geeknights is not one, but 4 different shows. Sci-Tech Mondays, Gaming Tuesdays, Anime Comic Wednesdays, and Indiscriminate Thursdays.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.
It was the baby I stole from Randor. Princess Adora.
Princess Adora?
You remember? The baby. The baby we broke into the palace that time. It was the only time me and you worked together.
Yes, I remember. Yes, the baby. Oh, yes, the baby. Yes. What?
The baby, Skeletor. You remember. You must remember. It was that one time. Remember, I was having a hard time with the vehicle, couldn't get the jetpack flying on the... You remember?
Oh, yes, the baby, of course.